how basically its meaning is conveyed in the 21st century.
And if it's still relevant.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out what the definition of lobola is.
According to the Oxford Dictionary.
So, among Southern African people, lobola is defined as a bride price, traditionally one paid with cattle. The practice of paying a bride price. And from another website, makambaonline.com, it reads, the main purpose of lobola is to thank the bride's family for their efforts in the upbringing of their daughter in a manner that simultaneously unites two families, because marriage in African culture is not just the union of two individuals, but rather that of the two families. So, I see you're coughing. Do tell.
But, okay.
So where do we start?
So, I feel like especially Zimbabwean, we're Zimbabweans.
We use the same context first.
Every Zimbabwean I know probably has at least one story of a lobola payment or a lobola invoice that was exorbitant. Literally.
Let's talk about prices. How much?
12,000 US dollars.
On average, how much do they pay? So 12,000 is the highest. On average, how much have you seen? 6,000?
7,000 US dollars, which
and for our South African viewers, 6,000 is about like 90,000 rands.
Yeah.
And
90 something thousand rands.
12,000 US dollars is about almost 250,000
12,000 US is about
12,000 US dollars.
150, I would say.
150. Okay.
Wait, no. Yes, 150,000 rands. Yeah.
Let me just quickly do the
we're
thing.
We're about to do a conversion on air.
On air. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So 6, 7. And generally speaking, especially in our culture in Zimbabwe, so in South African culture, for the most part, any money for lobola is supposed to become money.
It's about 180,000
wow,
rand.
Damn.
For 12,000 US dollars.
You can buy a decent car with that money. That's a decent down payment.
For a house.
For real. So, lobola is, in Zimbabwean culture, has become some sort of a commodity because... And it's not even... I was thinking if it's because of the economic situation, but I remember growing up hearing stories where the bride's family would ask for shit like sirloin steak.
Really?
Cell phones. You know.
And going by this definition, this is supposed to unite the two families.
Right.
And
so...
And how does sirloin steak and cell phones unite the two families?
And I think this is the thing where... This is the big disconnect, because a lot of people our age don't understand lobola, right? One, we don't understand that for the most part, when in the older days, when this whole lobola thing was a thing, the man was probably the one who was working and the woman wasn't. Whereas now, you've got couples where, you know, they both work. They both earn a lot of money. Maybe sometimes the woman makes more.
Let's even start there. So these days, the woman makes maybe 3 times more than the man. And the woman's family still want the guy to pay, let's say, let's not go to 12,000, but let's make it 7,000.
7, yeah.
So we start off with this. So they want 7,000 US dollars, which roughly is, we said, about
almost 100,000.
Almost 100,000 rand.
Yeah, or even a bit over, yeah.
Or even a bit over, yes. But let's use 100,000 rand. And let's say I'm someone who earns just about 20,000 rand, but my girlfriend earns 50, 60,000 rand.
Yeah.
And she has more money. And but my girlfriend's family want more money, still want more money.
Yeah.
So how does that tackle? Because the first thing is, that's the first barrier, because that's going to cause some resentment ultimately.
It will. And it does. And it creates... See, like, look, the definition basically says it's supposed to unite two families. I think for a lot of families, Lobola has done the opposite.
I agree.
It has made families hate each other. And the thing is, in our culture, what happens is you do lobola and then you do your wedding, and then there's a ceremony we actually do, which is to welcome you into your husband's house, and you're supposed to go there and
To
just
welcome
do like
the wife
the
into the
wife,
house.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it's basically you're supposed to just do like a gesture, like cleaning the house or whatever. People will then turn it into an opportunity to punish your ass because you've now got a situation where the bride's family doesn't like you. I mean, the groom's family doesn't like the bride's family because they're like, oh, yeah, you guys used us as a money making opportunity. And I think I even heard a story where the guy left because
Yes.
he was like, I'm sorry, these demands are just too high,
Exorbitant.
too high.
I know a situation where actually happened to one of my relatives where they asked 12 of everything. So 12 packets of rice, 12 packets of sugar, 12
Oh,
everything,
wow.
because there were 12 sisters.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so each one had to get their own little grocery, and that's what they considered as part of the lobola. And it's no longer even anything about the two that are getting married.
No, and yeah,
It's so that's the first hurdle that
yeah,
lobola has to go through.
yeah,
Like in the case of what if the guy earns less?
yeah.
The second hurdle is a situation where subconsciously,
Uh-huh.
because the guy has paid so much money or is going to pay so much money, some guys then start having certain
Higher
expectations.
expectations.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they will see it as a
Or kind of like I invested some money in something.
pretty much, I've invested money into you, and hey, you better do the wifely duties.
And if you don't do them well, then it turns into a, oh wow, so this is what I paid for.
Exactly. So,
Especially because, like we said, I think the first big issue we just have in our culture is the prices are too high. The prices are too high. It's different from saying to a guy, pay 10,000 Rand, which is maybe about $700, right? There's a difference between saying that and saying pay
7 hours.
7,000, 7 times that, right? There's a difference. There's a difference. I think 10,000, 15,000. That feels like a token. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It does feel like it. That's a token. But
Especially if it gets reinvested into the couple.
yeah, but now when it's like 7,000, that also becomes an issue of, are you guys really like doing lobola, or are y'all actually just sitting down thinking how much money can we make out of this opportunity? And what happens in a lot of people's families, especially in Zim, I've heard stories where maybe the girl's dad died and now it's uncles
Uncles,
who had
brothers.
who had nothing to do with raising you, and now they're sitting there with their hands out like, yeah, we want some cash. And that's the challenge. And I think the challenge is, if you create a situation where you demand so much money for your child, do you think you're setting her up for a happy marriage, especially if you charge exorbitantly? And what usually happens in Zim is you pay lobola and then the family is like, we want a
Want a wedding.
wedding in 6 months. And you're like, hold up. The dude just paid for a ring. He just paid lobola. And now you want a wedding immediately.
all
Maybe
together
within a
within a
year.
year, yeah.
Within a year. And then also you want them, after they get married, to be able to start off
Their
on
own
the right
lives,
foot.
On the right foot.
Right.
A house, car.
But we've actually got situations now where couples start out in debt
All the time.
all the
Pretty much.
time. And now you've got a situation where maybe now you're seeing your in-laws now buying a new car and stuff. You'll be like, well, what the hell? So okay.
There's
so
bound to be
so
resentment.
our whole discussion is from a guy's perspective. How do you view the lobola thing?
So first of all, as I was telling Violet earlier on, most guys have an idea of what they think they should be paying for their girlfriend. And if the girlfriend's family is charging X amount more than that, you as the guy subconsciously are going to think, well, there should be X amount more to what I'm seeing currently. So let's say you live together, she cooks for you, she cleans for you, and if they charge you 50,000 rand more, which in your mind you'd be like, okay, you're not going to expect 50,000 rand more worth of experience or whatever, but you're going to expect slightly more than what you're getting now, because
Yeah.
there's always that topic of a lot of girls say they want to save uh,
Wifely
habits,
things
wifely things.
for the marriage.
Yes. So in your mind as the guy, you already like, okay, cool. Maybe she's holding back.
I'm gonna get something different here.
Yes, exactly. So I'm gonna get home cooked meal every day. And this also perpetuates this whole idea of I'm the man. Because we also have a discussion of, does Lobola also create this problem that we have of patriarchy, especially in like the black societies? Because the guy will be like, hey, I paid for you, literally, I paid for you, so you have to do as I say, even if it's wrong.
And I think a very important disclaimer that we have to make is that we're not against Lobola, because I think what I've realized with a lot of people is when modern children question things, they think we're trying to say that we don't want them. It's not that. I do not. I actually think, I've been to Lobola ceremonies that were beautiful, and I actually understood why what was being done was being done. But then I've also been to Lobola ceremonies where it feels punitive, where it actually feels like it's some sort of a punishment, you know. And so the question is, the thing is not to say Lobola is wrong. I just think that the Zimbabwean model of Lobola is extremely wrong, because listen, like, you're gonna be if I'm a doctor, late for you. If I'm an accountant, late for you. If I'm a pharmacist, late for you. If I'm educated, late. If I was educated outside of Zimbabwe, late. And it's stuff like that. If I'm pretty, late. It's stuff like that where you're like, okay, this is for real, almost at best a type of trying to recoup the expenses you spent in educating your daughter, which is what you're supposed to do.
And is that fair?
And no, it's not, because how come they don't expect that from their sons? If you educate your son, are you sitting there thinking, oh, well, when he gets married, I'm going to get all this stuff back? And I even remember my mom told me a story of, I think, a relative where the whole house is women, like 4 girls. And apparently people in the hood were laughing at them like, yeah, you guys aren't going to have anything really, because, all your daughters you've just got daughters, you don't have sons, and blah blah blah. And so it's this thing where it's like, at best it's a I want to recoup the money I spent, at worst it's a valuation system.
And then the other topic we talked about to add on to this is, does this also affect how girls see themselves, how they validate themselves?
Yeah.
So like some girls, where the amount paid versus what the amount was paid for, let's say her friends or someone else, is what they use to evaluate themselves. So let's say I pay 15,000 rand for you, and someone else pays 50,000 rand for your friend. Does that also then come into play in the sense that you are now looking at it from so I'm just worth 15, or she's worth 50, but I'm much prettier?
I don't think so, because I do think that, like, I think Lobola is a very personal thing for people. I do think women, the thing we do use to evaluate ourselves is the wedding, like a white wedding. The white wedding is really where pardon my French, the dick measuring begins. Because it's like, oh wow, my friend had a destination wedding and blah 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 blah, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, why are we having a small wedding? And I even was saying this the other day, that I actually feel like I've actually learned that in my culture there's actually a separation. Like, it's almost like the quality of your marriage is judged according to, did you have a white wedding or did you just do Lobola? And if you just did Lobola, it's kind of considered lowly. Whereas if you're really successful, what do? you have a wedding.
You have a wedding.
And so this is where I think the valuation system comes for girls, because I think it's like and I won't lie, I think I'm not gonna sit here and act like, weddings aren't beautiful, and the feeling of, oh wow, everybody showed up for me and I'm getting all this love and it's my big day and I'm a princess and all that stuff. That's great. But I think what I've learned is, what I actually admire about a lot of the people in my life who've gotten married recently is, it's not about the wedding for them. It's really not. It's about the actual marriage. And so, even going back to the Lobola thing, I think ultimately I would think you want your child to be set up for the happiest situation. And trust me, like, coming from Zim, if you hear the things my parents say about the process of Lobola, like, there's like a long list of things: clothes for the mom, clothes for the dad, a cow for this, a cow
white
for
cow for the
that.
mom.
Right. And it's good and well, I think, when it's cows, because that makes sense to me.
Cows are expensive.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I think I've heard a story of someone who got paid 24,000, who was charged 24,000 US, and I'm like, political families though.
But still, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and so it's a situation where, because you talked about the male perspective, I think the female perspective, to be very frank, is, how do you not sit there and feel like people are actually like trading you?
That's a good question, because you're being turned into an object.
And I've heard so many people actually say, like, how shocked they were at the things their uncles and thingies were now saying at those ceremonies. Because now you're hurt, because you're like, oh, okay, I thought you were just trying to help me get married, and now you've got some uncle who's like, and it's always the uncles who are never in your life that are all adamant about these things, and
True.
so that's the thing, where it's like, you actually get hurt, and I think you also just understand like how little power you have.
That's true. And another aspect to it is, on the bigger scale, even in South Africa,
Yeah.
I also think Lobola is doing
A disservice.
to women, because
Do
most
tell.
guys would now just skip the whole getting married, and what do? They just have fun with the girls. And because, let's be honest, you want a girl, you're not really sure if you really like her, but she wants to get married, she wants to get Lobola, and you're thinking, hey, I ain't got no 50,000 rands. What are you going to do? That's going to open up other markets, so to speak. So guys then tend to go for girls that are not looking to get married, and consequently, it makes a situation where there's fewer people getting married. So
Yeah.
girls are now even more desperate to get married, because like guys aren't just
And
getting,
also, like,
for a guy to marry someone now in this day and age,
Yeah.
he has to be fully committed to the idea
Yeah.
that, hey,
I'm
I'm
going to
pay
get charged a lot.
this amount,
Yeah.
I'm going to pay that amount, there's the lobola, there's the wedding, there's the house, there's everything after
And
that.
I also think, like, the thing that I've had to learn as a woman, I think, is, I'll admit, it's not something that I knew immediately, but I'm starting to understand that for a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the idea of being a man and getting married to a woman and not being able to provide for her, even if she's someone who's got her own money, is scary.
Oh, it's a very scary one. Most guys build their identities on that. You're either the provider or the protector as a guy. And if you can't do both, or one or the other, then that's a big problem. So most people will protect by being the provider. And
That's deep.
and if you can't be a provider, then you can't protect her.
So what are you doing?
So you're losing both in one go.
Yeah.
So most guys tend to wait on the marriage and the whole Lobola situation, not because they don't want to commit or they
Yeah.
don't want to do anything, but they want to do it at a time
Yeah.
when they're ready. And this also overspills into when women pressure their partners to be married.
Because I actually
and
think,
Lobola it.
like I said, I've
Yes.
made the realization that for a lot of men, not marrying you in the time frame that you expect, I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that he doesn't love you, or with the fact that, I always feel like, I think if a guy's intentions are good, you can tell.
So you saying that a lot of girls would have some time frame.
Yeah, for the most part.
Do tell what kind of time
Well,
frame
well,
usually,
I would think
randomly,
for a lot of girls,
like
it's
on average,
30 is literally where the gauntlet drops.
when she's 30 years old.
Yes. So for most women, I don't know why people have chosen such an arbitrary number, but for most women, the idea is by 30,
We
I
should be
need to be
married,
married because by 32 or whatever, I need to be
having
having a baby
kids and stuff like
and
that. Yeah.
stuff like that. So this is where the timeline then comes in. And I also think what happens to a lot of us girls is this idea of, hey, wait, so you and Tapiwa have been together for
X amount of years,
and
4,
he
3, 5.
and
Yeah.
he hasn't proposed to you? Like, I've heard women legitimately say that if a guy doesn't marry you in 3 years, then he's wasting your time.
But you see, this is going back to what we said. In 3 years, let's say we've known each other for 3 years, we are not in any place where financially we could actually do Lobola, ring, wedding, house.
And that's the
And
reality
these
of
are the
it.
four things
And
that
that's
are the main things
yeah.
after
Yep.
after for
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah.
Because it's all good and well to have the wedding, but where are you going to stay after the wedding?
Yeah, you're gonna go stay with your in-laws? No.
You can't do that. Are you going to be renting?
Are you
the
are
old
you are
place
you
that
gonna
used
pay
to?
are you gonna pay a lot of money for a wedding and then still be renting? Like, it's dicey.
Dicey. So
And I think that's the challenge that I think with women, I think the marriage is almost like I need to mitigate the fact that I'm starting to look like an idiot here. Like, he hasn't married me. Is he gonna marry me? Does he value me? Does he see me as a wife? What's gonna happen? Blah 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 blah. And I mean, for me, the first thing is I've never believed in getting married in your 20s. I do not believe in that at all. I
why?
believe that's a good question. I think women, I mean men too, but I'm speaking for on behalf like as a woman. I think as a woman you need to well, I used to always have this saying which was your frontal lobe, which is what's responsible for your decision making as a person, fully forms at 25 according to science. And this is why teenagers are so impulsive, and this is why teenagers are the way they are, because they don't have a fully formed frontal lobe. So my saying was always that I can't be getting married, one, before my frontal lobe fully develops, and two, I think there's something, and I don't know if it's different for you as a guy, there's something about you as a person that becomes more solid 28, 29, 30. This is what I believe.
So more experience,
Just you know yourself a lot
you're more
more,
assured.
and you're more confident, you're more assured. And also, to be honest, you've probably experienced a fair amount of independence where you get to make your own decisions, you spend your money the way you want. And also, like, yeah, like, I just feel like once you get to like that 28, 29, 30, I also feel like even the partner that you're with is more likely a true representation of the kind of person you want to be with, because you now know yourself, and because you know yourself,
You
and
should know
you should
yourself, yeah.
and not to say that, because you can also again have been with someone since you were 25. I think even if you stay together towards your 27, 28, you are now, you know yourself a lot more, so even that relationship should benefit from that. So I don't believe that you should even be dealing with the whole let's get married thing when you're like 25, 26, because I think you need to experience your 20s, and I think you need to experience your 20s single, not single, but at least on your own.
Yes.
Experience living alone, experience making decisions on your own. And then when you bring someone into that, because I think the other challenge that we have as women is that we just don't know how to be alone. You see?
Yeah.
So you also need to be on that, in that level. So I think this is the challenge that women face, that it's like, okay, I'm turning 30 though. And for some reason we were told this weird myth that when you turn 20, like, horrors start. But the more you look at the world we live in today, women are like coming into their own at like 40 something. So it's not even that. I mean, 40 is the new 20 within reason. So I think that those are some of the decisions that factor in. But going back to my point, I'm actually learning that for men, even if your woman is self-sustaining, even if your woman is independent, you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to, as you said, protect and provide. And I think that's what makes a lot of men take their time to propose. It's not because he has doubts about you. He might just have doubts about himself and how he's going to be able to be. Because also, don't we also want men who, like, are strong and smart and supportive? Like, I don't think that happens. I think for a man to fully come into his own, and I might be wrong because I'm just a woman here, I think that doesn't happen immediately.
No, it doesn't. And the main takeaway is that when it comes to Lobola itself, before you even get to marry to the weddings, because we're going to have a wedding special on another day. But if you look at Lobola on itself, it's a huge amount of money.
Yep.
It's a big commitment. And for you as the girl to just impose a certain time frame onto a guy, that also is a misalignment of goals.
Yep.
Because
Watch our episode on goals.
he has to be in a position where he's able to comfortably pay for
Yep.
it, or at least pay an amount
An
that
amount
he's
of it,
okay
yeah.
with, and not resent you as the woman. Because the problem is, once the resentment kicks in,
Eh.
and it can lead to a lot of things. So certain expectations. So okay, cool. I'm paying 50,000. Now you have to be a wife, and then now you can't really cook, or you're cooking.
Oh boy.
Or your cooking, for example, stays the same as when you were a girlfriend. So he's gonna be like, okay, so why did I just pay for?
Yeah.
And those are things that start getting to his
And
head.
also
So
he'll hate your family, which is the other
hate the
thing,
family
which is
and all
like
that.
you
And
do not want a situation where you're going into this and they're looking at the bride's family like, oh my gosh, these people, these greedy ass people. And we can say all we want to say, but we're humans. This is how we would respond.
that's true.
Especially because if you're now making, because the other thing about marriage is that marriage, from what I hear, is not easy. And I don't think it makes it easier if you're starting from a foot where he's on some shop, but I paid so much money for this, and that kind of thing. So to me, I think really the conclusion is I think we need to go back to the original idea of Lobola, which is token of appreciation
Uniting families.
and bringing families together, and if possible, for the money, or at least some of it, to contribute to the wedding, so
Yes.
that it's actually a reinvestment in the couple. It's not an investment in you. Next thing you'll be seeing people extending houses and shit, and you're like, but how?
Yeah, because like if I was to pay Lobola and at my wedding I'm seeing my partner's family now driving nice cars because of the money that I paid,
Yeah.
and it doesn't go to our wedding and they still insist on a wedding, I would not feel good about that. So I'm pretty sure most guys wouldn't feel good about that anyways. But especially if my partner is on some, we need to get married now.
Yeah.
I pay the Lobola and her family is now all doing good. And even to throw a span in the works, if my family is also struggling. So now,
Which is what the situation in
Yeah.
Zim is for most people.
for most people, even here in SA.
For most people, yeah.
So I take a loan, I get you and your family, quote unquote, wealthy, and meanwhile, my people are living on a grant, and your people are now living better
Yeah.
because of the Lobola that
And
I
it's
just
interesting
paid.
because sadly,
Yeah.
Lobola has actually become a form of black tax.
It is a form
Like
of
you
black
end
tax.
up, because basically you end up realizing that you're paying for your in-laws to enter another lifestyle. And I think the thing that I think a lot of us women, I think we don't understand is it's not his money. Listen, it's yours, both of you. Even if you guys have not gotten married yet, you guys are a unit. That money is for both of you. It's not Lobola coming out of his bank account, because even if you guys don't share expenses in your
Yeah,
relationship
his expenses
state
are gonna,
or whatever, you are
trickle
gonna
out.
share you are gonna share expenses when you get married. So you don't want
It's
that.
in your best interest
It
to
is
make it
right.
reasonable
So
as possible.
yeah, so I think, but then again, the challenge about most girls is that you have no control over what your family's gonna say.
You have no control, and this is where we're discussing about how is it becoming the 21st century that, as much as the world has progressed in women's rights,
Yeah.
that they still don't have control over their own
Life.
Lobola
Yeah.
proceedings, where, you've got uncles and dads and
Aunts and stuff like that.
aunts charging what they think you should be worth
No,
on your own
what
body
they think
and
they
your
should
own
get. Yeah.
relationship, and
Yeah.
so those are things that we're trying to also look into, especially if the money is not actually then reinvested in the
Yeah.
relationship,
And if
it's exorbitant.
yeah,
All right.
so your price is way too high. You
Yeah.
need to cut it. In conclusion.
All right. Thank you. Cheers.